The interest in cars has been apparent even before motor vehicles were invented. People in the 1800s were definitely fascinated with a horseless carriage, and when Carl Benz invented the motor wagon and patented it, it was abruptly obvious. With the surge of many newfound car companies that never really took off, Daimler, or Mercedes as it is called now, had a unique history in motorsports. The first races were on public roads, looking a little similar to rally races, but they were organized to test the reliability of these cars, and they took place in Paris. Skip to the 1900s. This is when everything took off. Daimler merged with Benz and is now called Mercedes-Benz. At the beginning of World War II, Mercedes created the W125. It was originally a Grand Prix-style car powered by a supercharged inline 8 with a top speed of 320 kilometers an hour, or nearly 200 miles per hour, which in the late 1930s, there was no safety, so one slip-up would most likely end in death. And a slip-up did happen in Mercedes' history. In 1955, the Mercedes 300 SLR, driven by Pierre Levesque, made contact with Lance Mackley that sent his front end airborne. With limited safety for crowds by earth embankments and sometimes concrete walls, this crash was not even a crash, but a tragic disaster. It started out as nearly an airborne crash that would have sent him into the wall at any modern track, but no. Instead, Pierre's Mercedes launched into the audience and rolled over people. This is what an eyewitness said about this. After a few seconds, I got up and could not see anything from my left eye. A piece of human brain covered the left lens of my glass. I had a piece of scalp on my neck. When I saw blood on my hands, I began to go into shock. I looked and saw a headless corpse next to me, a binocular strap around its neck. From Jacques Riley, who would later go on to race the same 24 hours of Le Mans. When a racing driver begins their career at either 5 or 50, they usually know one thing: it is dangerous. But the danger makes motor racing what it is. When cars are racing single file, there's absolutely no sense of danger, but when cars are side by side, there is a sense of danger. And when there is a sense of danger, a little mistake of locking up or turning too early could cause damage for both cars, or possibly a huge crash. On the other side of the earth, in the United States, one of the biggest racing series started, from people wanting to get drunk. Moonshiners in the 1920s to the early 1930s would tune their cars to let them outrun the cops with beer inside of the car, in order to not get arrested due to prohibition. After prohibition was repealed, the moonshiners could drink, but had tuned-up cars sitting around, so they raced each other. Head 20-something years back, the first ever Indianapolis 500 was hosted. Indy cars were most likely based on Grand Prix cars of Europe. The Indy 500 will become part of the Triple Crown of racing, and at the time of writing the script, the 109th running of the Indy 500 has taken place. With the sense of danger looming around, accidents always happen, and a man who was not known for accidents had some. Ayrton Senna was a Brazilian racing driver born on March 21st of 1960. Ayrton was known as a master in rain. The first ever race he won was the 1985 Portuguese Grand Prix. Ayrton had waited at his local kart track to rain as a kid. As he was not proud of his performance in the rain, he would practice for hours on end in the rain. Skip to the beginning of his Formula One career. In Estoril, the race seemed to be in the wet, and it was great for Ayrton, with the experience he needed for the wet. Along with in qualifying, he set a time of 1:21.007 seconds. He would start the race in his Lotus 97T, maintaining first and slowly gaining an advantage on his teammate, and later in that race he would win, starting the long and storied career that was cut short in 1992. The Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix in 1992 was possibly the worst race weekend for Formula One in decades. Roland Ratzenberger, an Austrian racing driver in his first Formula One season, had crashed in practice. Roland was 33 and in his first race at Imola, in his third Formula One race. Roland at the Villeneuve curve in practice session went into the wall at 140 miles per hour or 225 kilometers an hour. This marked the first death of the 1994 San Marino Grand Prix and would not be the last. Ayrton Senna, a champion at this point, was questioning whether or not to race due to the safety concerns. The next day, coming through Tamburello racing beside Michael Schumacher, Ayrton Senna's car gave up on him. The front suspension of the Williams broke, destroying Senna's steering, and with nothing to his ability, he went into the concrete wall at Tamburello. Senna had an Austrian flag in his car that he would wave when he either finished or won. Senna was 34, a racing legend's career cut short. From 1994 on, racing never really recovered from Senna's crash until now. Back in the USA, a legend of the sport of NASCAR mentioned Ayrton Senna after winning Talladega.
prayers to the family of Eric and Senna and all his fans. He was a great racer, and it's a shame to see him go like he did.
The tumultuous tale of Dale Earnhardt Sr. has been talked about plenty of times, but through the final years of his career were probably the most remembered. As a kid, Dale Sr. had looked up to his dad, which raced in the little series created by Bill France, NASCAR. Dale Sr. in high school dropped out and pursued racing. The long-revered career of the Intimidator followed. In 2001, the NASCAR Winston Cup Series showed up to its home track, Daytona International Speedway. The 2.5-mile track awaited cars on track, and chaos would follow. With the race nearly reaching the end, Fox Sports decided to cut to ads, and as soon as they cut back, Tony Stewart was upside down in the big one, and a red flag followed. On Fox, Tony's onboard was on the screen, an audio that says, Some people thought that it was simply Tony Stewart thinking he had made it through the wreck, because his onboard was on screen. But little did people know it was Ken Schrader that was on his team radio. And later that day, Ken Schrader would be involved in probably the worst accidents in NASCAR, not by the severity, but the implications it had on the sport in general. On the last lap of the Daytona 500, Dale Sr. in fourth was collected in a crash where he was turned, and his car pointed headfirst into the concrete barrier of Daytona. Dale Earnhardt Sr. would pass away aged 49. He died due to a basilar skull fracture after he was turned by Ken Schrader. There's no defined reason why people are infatuated with racing 1.5-ton hunks of metal on a glorified horse track. There are, though, multiple reasons. One of them is not the fact of danger. If you are a racing driver, or really want to race at least, whenever you race in real life, you don't think of the danger. The real reason or reasons is the control, the power, and the speed. Go up to any racing driver and ask them why they do it. They will either not really know or say one of the three reasons. What went from people testing the limits of their automobiles to a full-blown sport that has gone on for decades and decades. Many people live out as legends, and some die as heroes, and others live out as villains. Through the century that motorsports has been around, stuff has changed a lot for some series, but others is just pure racing. The idea of a race is when people or competitors enter in an automobile and race cars, and whoever's the fastest will win. But it slowly turned to focus on strategy, being one with the machine, and raw talent. Now is the time where motorsports are becoming mainstream, at least F1 with the movie, And most motorsports are easily accessible to watch in most countries. GT racing has been the best example of pure racing. Go to Daytona, Le Mans, the Nürburgring, Spa 24 Hour. Even though I didn't watch the Spa 24 Hour, that doesn't matter. GT3 racing is at its peak. RIP GTE. But besides that, racing is in a good time right now. And to close this video out, it's time I ask you a question. What video should I do next? I have two ideas. The underrated world of motorcycle racing, which is going to take long to create, or the history of Corvette racing, which might be a little bit quicker. If you made it this far, comment down below what you're thinking, and make sure to subscribe so that I have justification to keep creating videos. Bye.